So Composer, NPM,
Yeah.
Ruby gems, all of that stuff. When should a developer learn those?
As soon as you get to the point where you're doing something that requires some sort of library of that type. So if you're doing, when you're starting off and you're doing simple hello world applications and things like that, you're probably not going to need Composer or an NPM or anything like that, because you're using native stuff within the language.
Mm-hmm.
As soon as you start to progress beyond that, so say maybe you're doing a PHP project and you're actually starting to consume an API, so you're getting stuff from the internet and you're doing something with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking to other platforms.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're doing some more complex form validation in the front end, or you're doing more complicated graphic stuff. That's when you'll probably start looking for libraries initially to help you do what you're doing. Because one of the key things about a good developer is good developers are lazy. I've had lots of conversation with lots of people about this, and they say, what do you mean they're lazy? A good developer won't rewrite code if they don't have to.
Yeah.
They will reuse stuff they can do. So you start to think and you start to work in a modular way as you become more experienced. And one of the key things there is, if there's a library out there that's already does what you need and it's being maintained by hundreds of other people, it's being used by hundreds more people, it makes sense to use that, because you're you. Or maybe you're part of a small team if you're lucky, so that 5, 10, 15, there might be slightly more of you. If you compare that with an open source project that's probably being used by thousands of people, being maintained, hundreds of people can put pull requests in for it. They'll have found all the bugs, they'll have written it for you, so they'll have done a lot of the hard work, and then you can utilize their work. But it's not to say you shouldn't give credit to people, and you should always give back, even just helping with documentation or something like that. Right. There's a whole load of stuff you can do to help open source projects, even if you're just beginning and you don't feel confident as a coder.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And it's always good to give back. But that's, you probably, as soon as you go beyond, where you have a need for a library or there's something out there that will help, then that's probably the time where you should start learning about these things.
So this is the not invented here sort of headspace, isn't it? This thing of this package is already out there, so why spend time rebuilding it? However, when you are starting out, it's probably best to build things yourself rather than use the tools that are available, use the packages that are already there.
I'd say you probably want to get balance.
Yeah.
So you need to understand enough of the basics to be able to understand what the package is doing. So if you're going to use a package, look into it, try and understand what it's doing, but also be careful about which packages you're using and for what reason. So there was an issue a little while ago with NPM where a simple JavaScript function that everybody was using, I think it was trim or something like that.
It was left pad, I believe.
That's the one, yeah. Something that's very easy to do natively.
Yeah.
Everybody was using it. They removed it from NPM. All these websites suddenly wouldn't build anymore. And that was using something for the sake of using it, because it is so easy to do something like that. So it's about balance, and so much in this industry is, don't use a library just for the sake of it. Use it for a good reason. But also you should definitely have an understanding of what the library is doing, and you should look at the code as well. There have been, and this is going on a little bit from someone just starting out, but it's something that should be in your mind. There was a big hack with the BA website a little while ago. A lot of credit cards data was harvested. My understanding is that was down to an NPM module, one that had been infected with malware, that was pulled in and utilized. So, in the back of your mind, you need to be understanding, what does this do? Because, if you do, go into web development, you end up working for, a larger company, and you're dealing with things like, personal details. It doesn't have to be credit card. It could be just personal details. It could be medical information. There are a lot of different things you could be dealing with. You have to understand whether or not, the libraries you're using, if you are going to use that, have got issues or are malicious. So yeah, there has to be that understanding there, definitely. And also there are, certainly with Composer, if you're then starting to again, we're moving on a lot from your just beginning, but with Composer, you can do things like set up your auto loading classes and things like that. So there is a lot that you can do with these libraries other than just pull in, other libraries and things like that. So that's another thing to do is if you are using Composer, NPM, or anything like that, learn about it and learn the full suite of what it can do and what it's capable of, not just the bits that are on Stack Overflow for the problem you're trying to solve.
Not just Composer require. Yeah, gotcha.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, something that I would add is that Composer is essentially, well, one of the good things for Composer is the fact that it does the auto loading, as you mentioned. But auto loading itself is a concept that needs to be learned.
Yes.
And so I would advise not to learn Composer until I understand what auto loading actually is. Same with NPM. Knowing how to import modules. You can create your own modules in JavaScript and learn how modules work without having to use NPM to use other things. So you could create your own little components and modules and bits and pieces